Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking at something pretty fascinating. It's how actors in Hollywood have felt the need to sometimes change their appearance to break free from typecasting and
Yep.
really land those roles that they want. We have a whole bunch of articles and interviews that we're going to be pulling from.
And it's fascinating, isn't it? These decisions that actors make can really give us a glimpse into like the power dynamics of the industry and the pressures that they face.
Absolutely.
So we're going to be unraveling how race, ethnicity, and even hair color, can have such a huge impact on their careers.
Right. Let's kick things off with Sofia Vergara. Now, she's a natural blonde.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. But early on, she was told that she didn't look Latina enough for Hollywood, so she decided to dye her hair dark.
And this really speaks volumes about the pressure actors, especially those from diverse backgrounds, feel to fit into, these narrow molds to get cast. And Vergara herself has said that this change changed my life.
Mm.
And, soon after that, she landed her breakout role in Modern Family.
It really makes you wonder who gets to decide what Latina should look like.
Right.
And it's not just about ethnicity, of course. Jennifer Aniston's story really sheds light on the immense pressure actresses feel to have a certain body type. Her agent actually advised her to lose weight if she wanted to get more roles.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And Aniston later described this as, quote, the disgusting thing of Hollywood, unquote. It brings up these important questions about Hollywood's obsession with weight. And it really highlights how just talent and skill aren't always enough.
It's a tough industry to break into. And for some, these pressures, they start really early on, like Ariel Winter.
Oh, yeah.
She began acting as a child, and she was told to dye her hair black at just 7 years old.
7 years old.
Wow.
Just to be more, quote, marketable.
This is just crazy. It really illustrates a troubling trend, how young actors are often subjected to these pressures, which can, deeply impact their self-image and their mental health. And Winter herself has spoken openly about facing intense scrutiny and rejection from such a young age.
Wow. Let's shift gears for a moment. Let's talk about Olivia Wilde. She's talked about how her experience changed dramatically when she went from blonde to brunette.
Really?
Yeah, the types of roles that she was offered were completely different.
What's so interesting is, her observation was that she felt brunette roles were often perceived as more intellectual.
Yeah.
Like, that challenges some of these deep-seated assumptions about blonde actresses, always being cast in these, flirtatious or less serious roles.
Absolutely.
Oh.
And speaking of defying expectations,
Yeah.
Jennifer Grey from Dirty Dancing,
Yeah.
she actually underwent 2 rhinoplasties early in her career.
Oh, wow.
And it was her mother's suggestion.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Her mom, having seen the challenges of Hollywood firsthand, told her to, quote, make it easier for them, unquote, to cast her. It wasn't just industry pressure. It was pressure from within her own family.
Right.
She also mentioned feeling this pressure to avoid being perceived as, quote, too Jewish, which really highlights, the lack of representation that existed then and to some extent still exists now.
Yeah, it speaks to a long-standing issue in Hollywood where actors from certain backgrounds, they felt they had to downplay their heritage
Right.
just to fit in. And this pressure to conform affected men as well.
Yeah.
Take Chris Pratt, for example.
Yeah.
He was typecast as that funny fat friend a lot. He was even told he was too fat for some roles.
Yeah. And ultimately, he decided to make a change, lost a lot of weight, and it really did open doors for him to take on more dramatic roles.
Right.
Like Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. He landed that role after his transformation.
It's so interesting for men, too. Physical appearance plays a huge role in getting those coveted action roles.
For sure.
Yeah.
Now, Sydney Sweeney, for her, being blonde, seemed to be the key to more opportunities. She's naturally brunette.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. But she admitted that she actually booked way more roles as a blonde.
That's interesting. This blonde bombshell stereotype, we've seen it play out time and time again.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But Sweeney actually decided to go back to her natural hair color,
Yeah.
because the constant dyeing was just damaging her hair.
Yeah.
It's amazing how even these subtle changes can have a big impact. Amy Adams found that just dyeing her hair red-shifted how people saw her.
Really?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
As a blonde, she was often seen as flirtatious or not very bright. But as a redhead, she was seen as more quirky and fun.
Mm.
And interestingly enough, that change coincided with her getting her breakout role in the film Junebug.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, Rebel Wilson was incredibly successful playing, like, the fat, funny girl for years, and she's been very vocal about believing that physical transformation can lead to new opportunities in Hollywood.
Her story brings up all these important questions about the limitations that actors face and the pressure to constantly reinvent themselves.
Right.
She's even said, quote, "Unfortunately, in Hollywood, people need to see you differently to cast you differently."
So they have to fit into these preconceived notions, right?
Yeah.
Now, before we get too deep into these themes, let's step back in time and look at Rita Hayworth.
Hmm.
Her story is incredibly revealing, especially when you consider the time that she was working in.
It is striking. She not only had to adopt a stage name, Rita Hayworth, just to downplay her Latina heritage, but she's also pressured to undergo all these procedures to change her appearance. There was a significant amount of control exerted by her husband at the time.
It's crazy. Her husband actually made her undergo electrolysis to change her hairline
Hmm.
and insisted she dye her hair red to make her appear less Latina.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's just such a stark reminder of the extreme pressures and control that actors, especially women, faced back then. Rita Hayworth was basically treated as a commodity. She was molded into this image that was deemed marketable to a wider audience.
It's just wild to think about that. Even the biggest stars weren't immune to these pressures.
Oh, no. Of course.
Marilyn Monroe, she's a beauty icon.
Mm.
But even she faced scrutiny and was supposedly pressured to undergo procedures to change her appearance.
Wow, that's incredible. It's a reminder that even those who embody the ideal can fall victim to these unrealistic standards.
Right. So we've talked about hair dye, weight loss, more invasive procedures. I think what's really striking is how all of these stories, even though they span decades and different experiences, they all point to just how influential beauty standards are in Hollywood.
You're absolutely right. These stories show us this constant struggle for acceptance, the pressure to fit into these boxes. And, it really starts conversation about representation and diversity. And that's something we'll keep talking about in part 2 of our deep dive.
Yeah, we've got a lot more to uncover, so stick around.
So, as we've seen these transformations, they aren't just about vanity. They're often, I guess you could call them calculated moves, right?
Right.
Career moves.
Yeah.
Driven by this desire to break free from typecasting and get to play a wider range of characters.
It's almost like they're playing this game,
Right.
trying to figure out, what are the rules?
Yeah.
How can I adapt my appearance to succeed? But what happens long term?
That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah, for them and for the industry.
It's a really important question. I mean, on the one hand, these transformations, they can be empowering.
Yeah.
Actors get more control over their image.
Right.
They can pursue the roles they want. Like Chris Pratt, right? His transformation, it gave him all these opportunities.
Yeah.
He got the success he wanted. But on the other hand, it kind of, it keeps the system going that values a really narrow idea of beauty.
Right.
And it often leaves out people who don't fit that mold.
It creates this cycle, right? Where actors feel this pressure to conform to these oftentimes really unrealistic standards. And they end up sacrificing, their individuality.
Absolutely. And this pressure, it can be even worse for, actors from marginalized groups.
Right.
Because they already face so many barriers in the industry.
Like Rita Hayworth.
Exactly.
She was forced to, downplay her heritage.
Right. Just to appeal to a wider audience. It's a reminder of how, Hollywood has historically favored certain looks.
Yeah.
And really marginalized others.
And it's a legacy that we're still dealing with today. I mean, there has been some progress.
For sure.
Representation's getting better.
Mm-hmm.
But we still got a long way to go.
Yeah.
So how do we actually break free from this cycle?
Well, it's going to take a lot. We need more diversity behind the camera.
Yeah.
Writers, directors, producers who can tell, these nuanced and inclusive stories. And casting directors have to think outside the box.
Right.
They have to challenge those old ideas of what beauty is.
It's also about empowering actors to be themselves. Right?
Yes. To embrace who they are and say no to that pressure to conform.
It's about celebrating what makes each person unique.
Exactly. True beauty is about those differences.
That's such a powerful message.
Yeah.
And it's so encouraging to see, actors already pushing back against these norms.
Right.
Like Sydney Sweeney going back to her natural hair color.
That's great. It's hopeful, right?
Yeah.
Feels like a shift towards, more authenticity.
Yeah. So big picture, what does this all mean for the future of Hollywood?
I think It's hard to say for sure, but I think we're at a crossroads.
Right.
We're seeing more diverse voices,
Yeah.
people demanding change,
Right.
and streaming, it's created all these new opportunities for actors from underrepresented groups.
It's an exciting time, I think.
It is.
It feels like things are moving in the right direction.
Yeah, it's about making progress in front of the camera and behind it,
Yeah.
creating a place where actors can be themselves and audiences can see themselves in the stories.
Well said. So, as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to leave you with this. How do you think Hollywood's beauty standards have changed? And where are they going?
That is a great question. We've seen shifts over time, but there's still a lot of work to do.
What do you want to see?
Exactly.
That's definitely something to think about. But before we get to the final part of our deep dive, let's take a second and reflect on what we've learned.
Yeah.
Yeah, the motivations, the pressures, the potential consequences of these transformations. And I hope it's given you, our listener, a better understanding of, the forces at play in this industry.
We'll be right back to wrap up our deep dive into the world of Hollywood transformations. And we are back for the final part of our deep dive on Hollywood transformations.
It's really interesting to think about all the different ways actors have kind of had to, navigate this industry.
Yeah.
And we've talked a lot about physical changes, but I wonder, are there other ways that actors challenge typecasting and those, preconceived notions?
Absolutely. While physical transformations are often the most visible, there are other ways that actors can kind of push back against those expectations. Some actors, they actually seek out roles that challenge how they're perceived.
So they're making choices to, shape their own story, right?
Yeah, to expand how the industry sees them,
Right.
and what they can do.
Right. Think about Daniel Radcliffe.
Oh, perfect example. Yeah.
He was so associated with Harry Potter,
Totally.
but he has really made an effort to take on these diverse and sometimes, really unexpected roles since then.
Right, like stage productions, independent films.
Yeah.
He's really, pushed himself
Yeah.
out of his comfort zone, and he's shown that he's got this, incredible range.
It shows a real commitment to, his craft,
Absolutely.
breaking free from that one image. And that's what's so inspiring about these stories.
Yeah,
You know,
totally.
it's like they're refusing to be put in a box.
Right, exactly.
And they're constantly, changing as artists.
It's about taking control, right?
Yeah.
Defining success on their own terms.
Yeah, not by the limited roles that are often positioned to them.
Yeah.
It's exciting to see this happening. What do you think? I mean, how is this going to continue to shape Hollywood?
I think, it's a reminder that things are always changing.
Right.
And there's always, this hope for things to become more inclusive,
Right.
more representative.
Yeah. So we've covered so much today. We've really dived deep into these Hollywood transformations. We've talked about the motivations,
Yeah.
the pressures, the consequences, the ways that actors are really pushing back.
It's been a fascinating conversation. I
Yeah.
hope it's giving you a new perspective on this crazy world,
Yeah.
and maybe got you thinking about, the power of image and being true to yourself and the push for a more inclusive Hollywood.
It's been so great exploring all this with you. And to all our listeners out there, thanks for joining us for another deep dive. We'll be back soon with a brand new topic. But until then, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep celebrating what makes you unique.